Thank you for tuning in to Divine Times. This is Hilton Milan. And in this glorious summer day, I'm inviting all of you to check into the Divine Times within you. Right now, in memory and in present, let me present you a great present, my friend Stephen.
It's nice to be here.
You know, it started off some years ago when I'd invite men to my home to explore and express the divine in their lives. And, so we used to call it Divine Dudes. Or I used to call it Divine Dudes. And it was a guest night. It was a lot of fun. And it's evolved into this where people are saying, we need more of the divine. And it's not being just a gentleman, even though it includes that. And for you dames, being an amazing, divine dame, which is different than just being a dame, or just being a dude.
Yes.
What are some of your and the other thing, Stephen, in expressing it, it's not just now. I understand, you've been on your evolution on the divine path, for days, probably decades. Please, talk to us about that evolution, and how things have transformed for you, divinely.
Okay, I'm gonna tell a little story that happened a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a recognition that the outer world and the inner world are connected, and they're just one world. Now, I'll give you a story to express that sentiment.
Yes.
Okay, I had a dream, and in the dream, someone was spinning these blue stones, and I looked at the blue stones, and they were so bright, and the stones, they began to sing to me. And I was filled with such love from the sound that these stones were making, that I woke up with a sense of radiance and well-being and numinosity. It was a numinous experience. So it stayed with me, and later on the day I was having a coffee, and I was reading some material, and I could feel and hear this energy coming into my space. And it was like a wave or like a pond where the ripples come in, there's two stones dropped, and now they're intersecting. And it was coming from my left, and I could feel myself kind of bend over this way because I could feel the energy coming towards me. And I thought, well, what is that? It's nice, but it's like it's penetrating my space, my essence. And I looked over, and there was a Tibetan woman there in Western garb, and then I saw the blue stones. She had prayer beads, and she wasn't saying anything, but I could see that she was moving she is worrying the beads. She was moving them. And then I tuned into the energy that was coming towards me. And then I realized it's the same energy I had in the dream. And the blue stones in the dream were now manifested outside myself. And I just sat there, and I was a bit shocked or stunned, and I listened inwardly. And I heard, Om Mani Padme Hum. I thought, she's chanting that particular chant, that Tibetan chant. And I stood up and I walked towards her, and she saw me coming, and she leaned back because I had my own energy coming towards her.
Oh, yes.
So I stopped before I got too close, and I bent forward, and I said to her, Om Mani Padme Hum. And she broke into this smile because that's what she was chanting within herself, and I picked it up outwardly. And she's still working the stones. And so I went back and sat down, and our worlds came together, and I had a recognition of the inner world of dream and the outer world of reality had now melded, because you can look at things just having one meaning, or you can look at things symbolically, which fuses many levels simultaneously. And it was a much richer tapestry experiencing that world in that way. I had another story I want to tell, but do you have any questions about this one?
On the dream or our dreams, for many of us, or at least I can say for myself, I often or usually do not consciously remember my dreams. And as I practice or work, even pray and set the intention before sleep, to remember my dreams,
Yes.
it still is only occasionally that I have conscious recollection.
Yes.
And I live this almost waking dream sometimes of going, oh, I'm not good enough. Why aren't I remembering? I'm not doing it right. And I'm laughing at myself now because as a young elder, or I like to think of it as a young eternal.
Yes.
And I find myself now being treated as an elder. Publicly, people don't even know, but how did that happen?
Welcome to the club.
So I wanted to speak about dreams and that change or that transition and what might be helpful to youngsters, young and older and elder, into the eternal, whether we're 4 or 104, and we're nowhere near either of those extremes, somewhere and they're not even extremes, they're just numbers.
Yes. Well, what comes to mind in answer to your question
Please.
is that you don't remember your dreams, that's okay, you can't force them.
Right.
But what you can do is at night, before you go to sleep, you can remember what's the last thing you did before you came to bed, and keep on going back to when you woke up in the morning, and do it step by step. There you are right now, and you later you were having supper or whatever, and before that you were meeting with people, and before that you had breakfast, and before that you're with people, and so you go right back to when you first woke up. So what you're doing is you're taking your waking state and learning to witness it as if it's a dream. We have trouble remembering dreams and experiencing dreams because we lose ourselves in the dreams.
Yes.
We can be inside the dream and outside the dream. We can be both simultaneously. So by going back from the time you go to bed to when you woke up, you're witnessing it both inside, outside, which helps you carry on with the process when you go to sleep. Now, I will give myself a suggestion to wake up in the dream. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And you give yourself a suggestion to have a lucid dream. And a lucid dream is not just at night, it's during the day. You keep part of yourself reserved and aware of the flow of events. So, I'm on the subway, I go to get a seat, and someone rushes and sits down on the seat. And so, this is not a very good dream for me. So, I have a reaction. But if I can encompass my reaction, and it's okay if they have that seat. And then another opportunity opens where I can sit down, and this time, through graciousness, someone offers me a seat. Now, in this dream of life, if I grabbed the kid by the ear and took him out of the seat, I'd be lost in the dream. I'd just be a reaction. I think we have shadows scratching at the door.
Oh my gosh.
That's a dog that's been here.
Yes.
A lovely creature.
Look forward to Shadow's visit. We all have shadows, don't we? Sometimes until we recognize that that's not us, but a part of us.
Yeah, and using that word shadow, it's like you re-own your shadow that you're projecting onto the people. And so you may not change them, and you might, but you're changing yourself to stay awake during the whole day, and the same process carries on at nighttime.
I have a funny experience. I think in an earlier time we were speaking, you suggested when we look in the mirror, to see ourselves, or children in particular. And I have found in these last half dozen years, since I've had the experience of going blind or losing my material or outer sight,
Yes.
and I look in the mirror now, and it's like I barely see a shadow, and I sort of smile and I think, oh, the stories of the vampires, for instance.
Yes.
And they said they couldn't see them in the mirror, see themselves in the mirrors, and I laugh. I go, okay, well, so much for being a vampire. I'm.
Better luck next time.
Yeah. I love the light too much. So it said that the light illuminates that. So I don't even think I have to worry about that, do I?
Well, Hilton, you have an inner light.
Mm-hmm.
And many people have the outer light their whole life, but they have no inner light. It's the inner light that makes us fully human and makes us responsible for what we do and allows us to set up intent.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the world, and with no disrespect to anybody, they're blind outwardly and inwardly, but they focus outwardly as if this Maya, this samsara, is the only thing.
Yeah.
And they lose their inner light into the outer light. You can have both, but you have to have the inner light. And I would say in your case, whatever your karma is,
Yes.
you'll have the inner light. And the inner light is not just a light, it's love. And the inner light makes a sound. And it's the note that was given to us in this universe.
Yes.
And you find that many people that have the outer light, they come to a bad end, or they're unhappy with their life, or they're just reacting to life. And so there's no happiness in the sight they have.
Yes.
Because the arrow has to go outward into the world and inward. But it begins with the inward, your inner life, so that you can see the outer life.
I maybe have done it a bit backwards. I look in the mirror and I really don't see anything, so then I laugh and I sort of close my eyes and go, okay, there's the light. And I just realized that, okay, and even more than the light, it is the love. And in the love, there's also the sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the flow, and then rather than my panic of, I don't see, very much or hardly anything, and I just trust.
Ultimately, that's what it's done. And we have experience, and the experience builds faith. And we understand that our situation is always divinely inspired. It's reaching up to a level where we recognize that. Mm-hmm. Because we all have shadows and difficulties. We all have demons that come and harass us. But it's recognizing that when you accept the demons for what they are.
What are they?
They're disowned aspects of ourselves. But they're ourselves.
Yes.
And so when you accept them, they become angels to lead you into heaven. So you need the demons and the angels. That's complete acceptance of yourself and the world around you to go to a higher level.
How do we best love the demons?
Well, in my case,
Yeah.
When I have doubts and there's difficulties,
Yes.
I ask them, what have they come to teach me?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I have to write it down. And I realize that the outer face is the demon because I have not given it a voice, not given it a form, that I've given it hate. But when I say, come before me, I will listen to you, I will allow you the space to be what you are. At first it's very primitive, but as you give them love and space, they begin to transform. And you realize it's the repression that made them demonic.
Mm-hmm.
And by giving them love and space, they come with their true message, their inner face, which can be something just as mundane as you're taking on so much work you're going to collapse. And that was the message behind the torment they were giving you. They actually are looking out for you, saying, balance what you're doing. You can't take on more and more and more. You need some rest. So you make friends with all aspects of yourself.
Yes.
And other people. You know? Because what is within you is within everybody.
Yes. So in days where I'm battling, or I've been battling my own darkness,
Yes.
or, a duality, sometimes it feels like duplicity, like I've been my own worst enemy.
Duplicity and duality.
Yeah, catchwords. And so, for instance, I go to look forward and go, I can't see where I'm going. I've sort of taken up learning how to jog, lightly and slowly because, trees do not really move very much.
Yeah, they're
And
pretty
occasionally, I do a little bit more than bump into them.
Yes.
And I've learned to have great respect for immovable objects.
We're going to shoot a movie. It's going to be the Hilton Comedy Hour.
It feels like, but it compels me to have blind faith, pardon the pun.
Yes.
And I've taken to even, jogging lightly on this lakeshore path.
Yes.
And, and I take my staff,
Yeah.
and I actually will use it in front as a bumper.
Yes.
Should something be there. And occasionally when I think the path is clear and I feel like I'm on a straight path and straight and narrow, I know I've fallen off the path a few times and almost, run into the lake. But I was saved by probably a foot and a half because I felt the terrain change and I thought, and that water's cold. Anyhow, I've taken even more brave shenanigans, and I'm actually running sometimes when I think I'm safe. I pray I am, and I actually hold my staff up, and I'm just jogging like this. But what I'm noticing is this
Yes.
this essence, this joy, this divine time, just in the moment,
Yes.
beyond expectation or planning.
Yes.
That this body can move and the souls and feet can touch the earth, and with each step from heel into the arch of the foot and the ball of the foot and all 5 toes, and then another 5 toes and 10, and then 5 fingers and another 5 fingers, and then the spine activates and this whole body with all these parts
Yes.
and bones
Yes.
and vessels and muscles and organs, and they're all doing their miraculous work
Yes.
from this heart center that is just beating and beating,
Yes.
and like tens of thousands of times a day. And regardless of what I think up here, I'm beginning to realize and and understand and know that there is a mind, a heart mind, and a soul mind.
Yes.
And I say these two things, even though they're two distinct, they're also one. Could you elaborate a little?
Well, the Buddhists say that the heart center is your mind. And when you enter deeply into the heart center, either through a contemplation or at death, then
A contemplation or at death?
or your death.
Okay, let's come back to that. Carry on.
Okay, so you enter deeply within yourself, and then you eject yourself through the top of the head into light and sound. So for the Buddhists, your heart center is the mind center. It's where the mind begins and ends.
But what's up here?
Well, when they measure energy, you have more energy in the heart center, 50 times more than in the brain center. I mean, other paths say the spiritual eye is where you are, but everybody has to figure out where their center is. And when you begin to move from your center, amazingly, you're centered. And all the questions cease. So wherever
Can
you're...
it be dynamic so that it's actually flowing right through and activating all of it as an infinite one?
Well, that's another way of looking at it is that we have energy centers in our body called chakras.
Yes.
And the energy flows all around. And we've talked of this before. Like, we get stuck in the lower chakras.
Yes. Of
And
survival and
survival, sex, and power. And that
Yes.
seems to be enough. But as I've said many times, the heart center is the beginning of transcendence. So we're capable of loving ourselves and other people. And,
and then communicating at one level up, through what we say and don't say.
and then we can express that love through our voice, through the throat chakra, balanced by our spiritual vision in our spiritual eye. And then we can go to a place that's outside the head. And some paths say there's many levels above that. But we start functioning from our divinity. And then the question of what center is the center becomes irrelevant. It's just we begin to enter the presence of spirit, which is really beyond the body and mind and beyond answers that the mind requires. We enter into a certain wisdom, which is a detached understanding and witnessing of what life is or is not. And then even for a short period of time, there is no witnesser or what is witnessed. Maybe just for a few seconds. With some people, they live in that state. It's just like a state of oneness, a state of divinity without thinking about divinity. It's being rather than thinking of. And then we function from a level of being what we've always wanted to be and have always been in the present moment. And knowing that and seeing that and then thinking that and then feeling that and then acting that, we begin to function from a higher level that's even beyond the body and mind and the chakras and all that.
Is that then, in another interpretation, there's all this information in the world, data, information, that shifts into knowledge of being able to have some context for the information, but even knowledge is limited, to be good use or bad, from knowledge into wisdom. But even in wisdom, it's not the ultimate. I think the beginning of the ultimate or the divine is discernment.
Well, even that, the discernment, you still have part of you that's discerning. So there's a subject perceiving an object, so the subject discerns. But in the higher level, both the subject and object dissolve into something higher. For example, when a child is born,
Yes.
he is in the first chakra, which is survival, which is he's got to be fed and taken care of. But for a short period of time, the fontanelle, the opening at the top of the head, is there.
And that's like a little soft spot when babies are born. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's like it's not the bone is not hard or formed really there.
It hasn't closed, hasn't knitted.
But we can still feel it a little bit. Like there's like a point, a precious point, or a little bit of a tenderer point. That accurate?
Yes.
All right.
And with the children, they're still open. And you can see it in their eyes that they're dancing with the little people. They're talking to the angels. They're on a different level and they're physical at the same time.
And that's often until they're what, 4, 5, 6, 7, or is there?
No, I think it's first, whatever period of time, maybe only 8 months or 6 months before that begins to close. But with reference to your question about here, there's a Tibetan practice whereby they imagine in their heart center a red white dot and they shoot it out through the top of their head. It's called powa. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but you begin to shoot your consciousness out of your body, and one of the measures of success is that some fluid begins to seep from the fontanelle. And for some people it's closer to here, some people it's back here. And they take what they call calusa grass and they can put it in the opening, the aperture, that is now formed again. And so they walk around, he's got this piece of grass put into that aperture to show that they've opened that. That can be done, but you can also open it in your spirit self, not the physical.
Yes.
But it's like whatever way it's done, you have access to higher dimensions. But what's very important is you don't get spaced out and dreamy. Like if your head is in heaven, your feet have to be planted on the ground. Because to be a channel for spirit, we have to be functional on all levels. We're not in a cave someplace hiding from the world.
No.
We're here in this world, and we have to let the highest levels come into this world and be able to regulate them.
So as channels for spirit here,
Yes.
now in the moment, and as we're journeying, you spoke of birth and spoke of death, but let's deal with birth here for a moment, and maybe a little bit before birth.
Yes.
What would your awareness be of where we come from?
Let me just take a few seconds here to do a little contemplation. See what comes through. Certain inner movement and letting go of my past life. And what I'm aware of is red clothes. I don't know what it means. But it was like I came from a place and then I was disincarnate. And then somebody showed up and sang some songs to me, and then I came into this physical universe.
Yes.
To my mother, because she was so kind-hearted, it drew me. So
I remember Rose, and as I say, I knew her decades before I knew you, and just this divine energy. You know, I met with her, and she actually, not unlike you, channeled with me some of the divine from even my earlier life and childhood, and people that were dear to me and still on the planet then.
You're very much like her. You know, I find it amazing. You're more like her than I am, because you're heart-centered like she was. I used to talk to her about where she came from, but she being brought up in Christianity, she couldn't accept that. And one time I said to her, I says, "Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question, answer instantly. Don't think about it." I said, "Okay." She says, "Okay." I says, "Your past life, where were you?" She says, "Scotland." I says, "What happened?" She says, "I was the Spanish ambassador's daughter, and the Scots tricked me, and they got information from me, and then there was a cliff, and they threw me off the cliff, and I died in the rocks next to the water." And she was astounded that came through, because sometimes your belief system does not allow information to come through.
Yes.
But I managed to circumvent that, and she just said it. And even after that, like, you know, a week later or a month later, I would talk to her, and she had no recall of it, because it was too much for her to consciously accept that there are previous lives. And it's like everybody has to have her own experience. She didn't need that experience.
Yes. So that would bring us to, or brings me to look at, okay, we've got this time in between where we're, you know, co-creating, you know, looking for whatever it is we're looking for, maybe being, as, you know, I'm working on doing, you know, being at least a little divine. So, you know, and in this, you know, as middle agers, eternal agers now, you know, we're looking at, there are generations that have come after us now, and that will be here probably longer than we will. So how do you come to terms with that, or how do we come to terms with that, or dance with that, and embrace the changing dynamics in ways that are inspiring? Can it be done?
Well, we think we're doing it right now. We're speaking in the medium that the perennials, the millennials understand. By doing this here, we're speaking their language, and it's up to them to take whatever they experience and work with it.
Uh-huh.
And I also find that with young people, you have to talk about what they're interested in first,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe add something to it. Like with my grandchildren, they're always saying to me, tell me a story. So I tell them a story about what they're interested in. Paw Patrol, start off with that. And I was telling my granddaughter that there was this tunnel that opened up at the park,
Yes.
and they walked into it and couldn't find their way out.
Yeah.
And then they were afraid, so they asked for some help. So I kind of put in that you can ask for something higher. And I says, now what happened? And they says, oh, the Paw Patrol showed up and they backed the fire truck in, and whatever the dog is with the dots on him got on the ladder, and they put the ladder in, and we jumped on the ladder and they pulled us out. So I got them to participate, and they were able to ask for some help. So those are the seeds that I'm planting with that generation and any generation younger than me, to find their own ways of contacting the divine.
So that's for the children. What about for the the younger generation, their 30s, 40s, the middle generation, even their 50s?
Yeah.
30s, 40s, 50s. And then we're going to talk about the seniors, the rocking seniors.
Well, the ones 30s, 40, 50 and more,
Yeah.
I've talked to some of them, and like I talked to someone like that just a couple days ago, and he's in my circle, and I gave him a hug, and I could feel this discomfort in his heart and in his body, like from here and then radiating up towards the right side of his body. And I said to him, what's going on? And he says, oh, what do you mean? I said, you have discomfort in you. And he says, yeah, how did you know that? I says, vibrationally, energetically. And so he would say a few things
Yes.
that would release that, but he was relieved that he could say that. And he says, I says, do you need to say more? And he says, I can't say anymore. I says, then don't push it, that's fine. Just take one small step at a time. And I find that with the people very much involved with their lives and making a living, they don't want to talk about the divine if you label it divine, but if it's divine without being labeled, they're more open to it. So what you do is you accommodate yourself to someone's state of consciousness.
And meeting them where they're at, listening for, feeling for, honoring for, holding space for, and then assisting or serving or desiring to serve what would be a step stronger or truer or more fulfilling, a next step.
Well, I think the word you used was space. You hold the sacred space for people.
Yes.
We're doing that here right now. We hold the sacred space for people.
For everyone, every one of us, every one of you.
So people,
No one left behind.
no one left behind. And in that sacred space, people can evolve because they're accepted.
Yes, wherever they're at.
Yeah, and so you just take them where they are and just let it happen. But you actively hold the sacred space because you go into a silence within you. And in that silence is a space. So you can actually hear them, listen to them, because you're silent. And that's the sacred space they need to evolve. And it's like that silence is also love. It's like when you,
It's a stillness, but it's then effervescent.
it's effervescent. The sacred place is effervescent. It's sacred because there's love there. It's sacred because there's no judgment. It's sacred because it's being fully human. And if you want to humanize people, you have to be fully human with them so they can recognize their own humaneness.
I often like to call it humanity rather than just humanity. You
Yes.
know, let's be humane to everyone, including ourselves,
Yes.
equitably as one, honoring where everyone is, where anyone and everyone is, and then what would be useful in next fulfilling step.
You do this naturally. People open up to you because there's no, or I wouldn't say no, but very little judgment. You just take people as they are and they talk and you say, yeah, that's interesting, and you just keep moving with them, and you understand them, and it's like people want to be understood. They want to be heard, and you hear them. And I've said to you before, how did you know all this stuff about them? Well, Steve, when you walked over there and you came back, they told me everything. I says, that's great. You know, and that's acting as a divine dude. With other dudes and other dames, it's just like you let it flow.
You know, it was my late wife's hope and mine that mankind, you know, notice the word, it says mankind, you know, and womankind.
Yes.
And I felt as a child one of the most powerful forces that could ever occur in life would be the power of kindness and the power of love.
Yes, I too.
You know, and that's distinct from the power of love, distinct from the love of power.
That's where most people are stuck. Even everybody sometimes. It's like the power takes
Yes.
you over.
And that duality then, or shadow or ego, now speaking of death, there are times that I get incredibly sad
Yes.
and or angry at myself. And then there's a part of me then that, you know, wants to knock myself off because I'm so frustrated with not meeting my own expectations. And I'm realizing, God, I'm being nasty to myself. I need to have, you know, man up with more compassion.
Well, we all have the death wish.
Really?
It's built. Yeah, it's built into humanity. There's a death wish
Why?
because we're like lemmings, and we have the death wish within us because we haven't faced that darkness within ourselves. When we face that darkness is light. Because in the abyss, at the bottom of the abyss, is a well of light. So we have to face the things that we don't want to face in order to rise to a higher level. And you know, it's like sometimes you say, well, I wish I was dead.
Yes.
Well, don't say it too many times.
Mm-hmm.
Just notice when that happens and respect. Give a sacred space to that part of you in yourself and other people, and let it evolve. It's a transmutation of lead into gold. If any part of you is cut away, then you're no longer whole, you've been cut. So accept all parts, let them evolve to a higher level, and then you have yourself. And if you have yourself, you have everything.
And if I may add, you know, I wake up in the mornings and now I don't open my eyes right away because when I do, I'm learning to practice to be grateful for seeing anything at all.
Yes.
And it's a little bit challenging to get my orientation of where I am and where things are, you know, and I'm feeling around, and you know, and now I'm learning to also in and sometimes, I have that death wish.
Yeah.
And, I go, And I go, okay, what can I do to, honor that? And here I am, I've got breath, I've got a heart, mind, and really a heart of love for life, and saying, okay, how do I love this? And go forward, and I find my way, and find some water, or maybe something to eat, or and learning to stretch this body out in the morning, and connect it to the earth and to the sky, and into the center. And as I do that, then I start feeling better, and I feel like an eternal ager. That even though a part of me has died, my expectations or ego or shadow, then there's a part of me that is indestructible in terms of the soul set.
Yes.
The light, even more than the light, the love. For all the memories, all the current experiences, and the all in all for whatever the future may hold, and whenever my death time comes.
Yes.
To also be able to, in the actual physical, it's like, holy new ride, where are we going next?
Yes, that's a beneficent point of view.
Huh.
It's interesting. When you said part of you died, I was thinking that, so you picked up on my thoughts. Because people have said to me, this one woman said to me, she says, look, if I die, would you please talk at the funeral? And I says, well, I don't think you're going to die, but I think parts of you are dying, and you're going through a psychological death. And I says, you can celebrate that, because new parts of you will be resurrected. I says, you have to let go of the old for the new. It's not easy to die and be reborn. And she was so relieved. And I could sense from her that was the right thing to say in the moment. And I says, when your physical death happens, and it's for all of us, I says, that'll be fine too. Because all these minor deaths you're going through psychologically allows you to surrender at that proper moment. Now, I have a story.
So just on that, it's not just a transformation or a transmutation. It can be a translation of our limited thinking and identity and attachment.
Yes.
To, let's say, this translation into the eternal, into the infinite love.
Yeah, it's letting go.
And then just being alive in whatever fashion or form we are, without being attached to how it's going to be, but in the now.
To be in the present moment is everything. When you can do that, we become as innocent children. And children are always having a great time playing in the moment.
Yes.
We're always, what's going to happen in the future, and that bad guy harmed me back here in the past, and nobody's in the present. And when you live in the present, you're living in your own divinity.
I had a annual family doctors meeting with my mother, Lady Mumsy.
Yes.
At the home that she's in.
I remember those.
Yes, and it was quite amazing to have 5 staffers, a doctor, a nurse, a physiotherapist, another nurse's aide, people that care for many people, and certainly support, my Lady Mumsy.
Yes.
It also supports me, that I know she's taken care of. She has a safe community.
Yes.
She has events, little concerts, little art classes, puzzles, and it's not nursery school, but it's and it's not even God's waiting room, because maybe it is, but she's actually enjoying moments.
Yes.
Precious moments. Even today she spoke of different challenges, but that she's being able to shift from her very sad way of being.
Yes.
Because she received a lot of anger and abuse in her childhood.
Yes.
And I knew that through my childhood with her.
Yes.
And her immense struggles.
Yes.
And now, well in her 80s, Lady Mumsy's beginning to shine. even at moments in some of her past and laughing at things and her stories. And to see the transformation of her being and her acceptance and her diminishment of fear and her increase in faith. It's at least a little divine.
Yes. Well, this facing our psychological death and physical death, we begin to change the narrative, our life story. We begin to rewrite it. And if we become more aware, we begin to rewrite the bad parts by taking the knowledge that the bad parts have shown us.
The lessons.
The
gifts. There are no problems without gifts in them for us.
And then we rewrite the narrative in a more positive way. And so our consciousness shifts to a better place. If the story has a bad ending, accept what it has taught you and rewrite it. And psychologically, the unconscious doesn't know the difference between the story that happened and the story that's the rewrite. And you begin to act more attuned to the light within you in the tower that's
Yes.
right there before us in this picture.
Oh,
Instead of from a lower place on that tower, in the darkness, we begin to rise towards the light that we are. Very interesting. And sometimes you can see external symbols, like right here now.
Yes.
Sometimes you'll see a person or a situation or a tower or a picture, and it receives your blessing, your higher understanding, and you're elevated. It doesn't always have to be an inner image, it can be outer things.
Yes.
You know, like when I talked about that Tibetan woman and the prayer beads and all that, that was an inner and outer thing.
Yes. And for the seniors or the new young eternals that are tuning in, what are some of the discoveries that we maybe could inspire or challenge, younger and older seniors to begin exploring dancing with? Because we're here to serve.
Well, we all resonate at a certain frequency.
Yes.
When we tune into our frequency, everything around us vibrates. And sometimes the vibrations, they don't fit well, so you can adjust your own frequency so it fits well. So whether you're with seniors or with young people, if you adjust your vibration and you set up your intent being that I will be a channel for spirit.
And spirit and for service.
And give service, let it flow into the world. Don't give people what you want to give them what they want or what they need. And that way you affect everybody. And your whole environment vibrates around you when you've tuned into that. If you're walking through the world banging your head against the wall, maybe it's time you change your vibration and recognize you can go around the wall and that you can emanate what you want into the world. Because most of the time there's this unconscious dialogue and vision and feeling going on. It's like a movie we carry with us unconsciously, and it's affecting the world around us. If we change the inner movie, the world around us changes too.
I want to come back to an example of a story that you had in your younger life that you have reframed and worked, and maybe you'd share that with us. And just before you do,
Yes.
I want to share one other idea, because you were speaking of this principle of how to treat others. And there's an old saying, it's called sometimes the golden rule, and this one is treat others as you would like to be treated.
Yes, it's very important.
As good as that is, I think it's even a little more divine. And I've heard it called the platinum rule, or I'd like to call it the light rule.
Yes.
Treat others as they would like to be treated themselves. And that requires the investment of our listening, our time, our sensitivity.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. You can emanate into your environment and fill your environment just with your awareness. And you start giving people what they need to hear rather than broadcasting what you want to say. I remember one time a person walked up to me and said, "You know, your mother hasn't died. Her energy's just changed to a different level. And she still emanates her love to you."
Yeah.
And I thought, how did that person know that I had to hear that outside myself? And sometimes you do. And sometimes people are like tuning forks. They're tuned into your level for whatever reason, and they give you what you need. And because they give you what you need, you're capable of giving other people what they need. Because as one candle lights another candle, you begin to function from that higher level. It doesn't mean that you don't fall down, but you fall down, like I always say to Hilton, fall down, but keep on staggering towards the light.
I recently, as I say, I'm learning to jog, and I was jogging over one of the bridges, and this was a couple of weeks ago, and I felt myself. I wasn't being meticulous with being aware of my feet, and I was getting a little tired, and next thing I knew, I think my foot tripped a little, and I felt myself falling, and I attempted to break the fall, and then I realized I'm gonna really hurt myself if I try to do that, so I just let myself fall into the fall.
Ah, very good.
But lightly, and
Yeah.
I sort of laughed. I said, "We're gonna be fine." And I found myself on the ground, shoulder down, head, and great clunk, 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 clunk. And I just laughed with my staff. And I was so grateful that there was some steel bars on the edge of the bridge.
Yes.
Because otherwise it would have been like going off a plank. and I just had to have this huge giggle at myself. Okay, I don't think there's too much damage here. As a matter of fact, it was just like a little collision. But I didn't get myself all panicked. If I had, I would have really hurt myself badly. And
This is an incredible principle here. Listen to this.
and I just let myself fall into the divine. And it just taught me not to be afraid of these things.
Yeah.
And to embrace and some people came running over, "Are you all right?" And okay. And I just picked myself up and got going again.
See, that's a secret that's being revealed. It's like whatever happens, you can tighten up and get hurt, or you can just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And it's like it's split seconds. You have to make the decision.
Yeah.
So you
And
make
even
the
though it
decision.
hurt, it didn't hurt, and it got lighter because I took a lighter view of the fall. And didn't take it so significantly or make myself so significant or serious. Because
Yeah,
I
that's it.
believed I would get up again, and sure enough I did.
Yeah, and it happens. It happens 1,000 times a day. It's not the
Each and every
physical
one of us.
Yeah.
Whether it be in the physical, the emotional, the mental, the economic,
Yeah.
even the spiritual. Like, I always thought the spiritual would be just like one place, but it seems to be dynamic.
Yeah, it's not.
Sometimes all over the place. Is that like that? How can that really be?
Well, spirit is formless, but it takes on the form that you want. And some people take the form and they say, "This is spirit," but it really comes from a formless level.
So it's really being master of, and master is not in a concrete way. It's master in an infinite way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without expectations or how it has to be. It's with whatever it is.
Well,
Self-mastery, maybe.
it's self-mastery, and it recognizes that any religion is the right religion if you like it.
Yes.
But it's like every religion is a form, and everything comes from the formless. If you believe that, then there can be no religious antagonism, because they're just expressions, different notes, different colored lights in the white light of God.
Oh, that's so lovely. Different colored lights and different sparkles and emanations and different shadows. And we're all learning, to have this light walk, aren't we?
Hopefully, and it's the time and evolution for us to do that.
Yeah.
It's like we need to go to a higher level collectively, for the goodness of our planet
is it truly higher or is it just lighter? Because sometimes I'm aware of duality, and I'm desiring to, both subsume and transcend it into something truer or diviner.
Well, whenever we want something,
Yeah.
we're divided into two.
Hmm.
And the part of us that's aware of that division, that is the divine. So we can say, I believe in God, I believe in spirit, and by saying that, we have stepped away from spirit, which is beyond our words, beyond our conception. It's the term I've used before is that in the immanence, what we see, what we hear, what we touch all around us, what we're thinking, in all this immanence that we live in, there's transcendence. And we recognize they're one, then wherever we go, we are in a state of transcendence. Whatever happens is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't divide it anymore. And in contemplation, you try to enter into that quietness, and in the quietness, you get a glimpse of something more. But the quietness is the quietness of the body and the mind, which opens you to what spirit has to offer. And then you receive that, and then it flows into the mind and body and out into the environment. It's almost like we have to die to ourselves in order to be ourselves. But the self that is our being is higher than our mind and body and the world around us, so that there is transcendence in immanence.
Yes.
And there's immanence in transcendence. We're at the top of the tower. We're also
Yes.
the bottom of the tower.
Yes. So times that you've felt in your life earlier on that you might have been at the bottom of the tower, and now as an elder, myself as an elder at least, I'm finding the inspiration, the time, the compulsion to reframe some of my past darkness or concerns into a more useful light. Can you share something with me, with us, of something that you've experienced or gone back to and are seeing anew?
Okay, I had an experience maybe 10 years ago, and I understood that experience on the level I was on at that point. Something like this balloon with the navigators at the back
Yes.
heading towards. When I wrote it, it was like I was this here, and now sometimes I can sense myself in the tower, and I've left this part back, this hot air balloon. And how far I rise in the tower, that's between me and spirit, what I'm ready to give up in order to live in the higher levels.
Could you speak more specifically of what that was?
It was a story. Here's the story.
Yes.
It fits in with the story I told you about the blue prayer beads. It's many things happening on many levels simultaneously.
Yes.
I was listening to the news, and I heard on the news that a tsunami had hit Indonesia and all the countries around the Indian Ocean.
Yes.
And then I just had about a 10-word blurb, maybe 15 words,
That was in 2008.
2008,
Yes.
around there. And it said, an elephant, because they have elephants in that part of the world,
Yes.
an elephant was saving people that were in a river that the tsunami had made. And
How
I
was
went,
it doing that?
and I went, it was grabbing him with its trunk and helping him out of the water. And I thought, that is incredible. And it just awoke part of myself, like, that like, here's an act of compassion by a creature that people don't invest with that quality. So I decided, well, what does Spirit want to say about this? So I wrote a story around all the events that I could imagine. And it went beyond the imagination. It would be like I would travel to Indonesia in my mind, in my higher self, and walk around there and experience what I experienced. And here's the story that came through. There was a young woman, she had a child, and she had a dream. And in the dream, she was engulfed by water, her and her child.
Yes.
And she cried out for help. And this creature, it was a huge snake, pulled her out of the water. And she looked at the creature, and the creature had a flower on top of its head. And the creature had such kind eyes. It had human eyes, long eyelashes. And it was a very loving creature. And she looked into the creature's eyes that had saved her, and the eyes spoke to her. And the eyes of this creature, of this snake, spoke to her. And she heard very faintly, "Follow the babies. Follow the babies. Follow the babies." And then she woke up in a sense of numinous exaltation, as if she had received the answer to the universe. And she went downstairs and walked outside, and she saw her sister, and she told her sister the whole experience. And her sister also was greatly affected by this, and they went their separate ways. And she went to the marketplace with her baby, and she's buying food, and then she hears this trumpeting, and it's elephants running through the village, and they seem somewhat desperate. And she listened to the trumpeting of their voices, and she heard something in that trumpeting that said, "Follow me for life." And she saw the elephants, and in front of the elephants were all their babies. And she remembered what that creature, the snake, said to her, "Follow the babies, follow the babies." And she scooped her kid up, and she joined in, and those that were be able to hear that joined in, and some of them didn't. Some of them stayed there, and she was running with the elephants and running with the babies, and then she felt this energy come behind her, which was the tsunami. And she said it was like a beast, and she was taken up in the maw of the beast, and she was twisted this way and twisted that way, and she was holding her child, and she could hear the child's heartbeat going bum 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 bum. And she realized her child was drowning and dying, and so was she. And she says, "Well, my last moment here, I'm going to just surrender." And she surrendered everything. And then she was amazed because this coil came around her, and she's got hold of her child and draws her out of the water and throws her up on the land. And she looks, and she's expecting to see a snake, as in the dream, because now she has a recall of what happened. But she looks into the eyes of this elephant with eyelashes and this beauty and love about the creature. And she sees that the elephant has hyacinths on its back and one on top of its head. And so it wasn't a snake, it was the trunk of the elephant that she thought was a snake. And she was in a state of awe, and the elephant stayed in the water, and the elephant was scooping up babies, both the living and dead, and tossing them up on the land and then grabbing another one. And she looked at the elephant, and the elephant stopped just for a second and looked over at her, and the eyes of the elephant turned turquoise for a second. And she looked above the creature's head where the flower was, the hyacinth, and she saw a faint outline of this female elephant's offspring that had drowned in the tsunami, but was still connected to the mother through their love, through the finer energies, the aura. And then the elephant looked back and carried on with what it needed to do, with her maternal love and energy for all life. And she's sitting on the bank with her kid, and she feels someone leaning next to her. And she looks over, and it's her sister. And her sister is covered with this gray-white paste or muck. And she looks at her and she says, "Sister, look at our sister, the elephant. She is saving the lives that she can. She is giving of herself, body, mind, and soul, to all life." And then she looked back, and her sister wasn't there. Later, when she met her sister said, I was drowning in this gray-white muck, and when I moved, I would begin to sink. And I thought, well, this is the end. And this huge snake went by, also covered with this gray-white muck. And she says, because of the dream, when you told me about the snake that saves, I overcame my fear of snakes, and I reached out and I grabbed the tail of this snake. And the snake, in saving itself, saved me and pulled me out of the muck. And as I was doing that, I looked beyond the snake, and I could see you like miles away from here. And I gave you such love for giving me salvation from this death. And her sister says, yeah, you appeared to me. You came beside me at that moment. And all the parts just came together. And they said, isn't it amazing how creatures we consider less than us can be more human than humans?
Mm-hmm.
And it is important that we listen. Listen. Follow the babies. Listen. Follow the babies. Listen. Follow the babies. So that story had an impact on me when I created it.
Yes.
And has an impact upon me now when I retell it. And I thought that might have never been recorded, and you've made that possible. And that's good that that story goes out.
Yes.
Because as you listen to that story, you'll have your own story.
I am inspired and touched by that, and even expanded to appreciate the infinitude of motherhood.
Yes.
And that nurturing that is beyond measure.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And how universal it can be and is available to any one of us that is receptive and willing to serve and be transformed by that.
Yes. The story has a seed.
Like divine action or divine, it's not just divine birth and death, it's divine being.
It is divine being. And that seed is what you grow in yourself. The story is a seed, you plant it in yourself, and it grows into your own story and grows into a tree of life, which is you. If you just listen to my story, you're only getting a part of it. You make it your own story, you add to it, you let it grow. And if there's bad parts of the story, write them too, because you might have to go through some kind of psychological death. The what you can say with a silver tongue is nothing compared to the golden heart. And you might have to go through the silver tongue before you can get to the golden heart. And the golden heart is the essence of what you are. And then you begin to live from your essence, and you walk into the world, and you activate the essences of those people that are ready to be activated. You become a channel for spirit. You are walking and dancing with the divine wherever you go.
Stephen, I can't thank you enough for engaging in this, divine dialogue with me, to remind everyone to look in the mirror and look for the divine light. Not just in others, in ourselves. And to really embrace the divine times that are available to us each and every moment.
And I appreciate you producing this sacred space where this can be discussed.
Yes.
And that flow of spirit can be allowed to take on its own shape and form.
Yes. Wow. Just before we close, I had spoken with you about, I don't know, I can't imagine that it was anything that was ever irritating about you, but if you were...
There is.
And I was asking for that transformation example of how something was for you, years or decades ago, and how you viewed it at the time, and now in your new lighter self, how that has changed, and so that it would serve as an example for me and maybe for others.
Okay, here's a very interesting thing. I remember that story so vividly.
Yes.
And by going through it again, I realized it was a symphony of 12 notes. But now it's a symphony of incredible number, billions of notes. And it's not just the notes, it's a sense of love that's increased.
Yes.
And it's the sense of colors. There's rainbows. Like, when I read the story, I can see rainbows sometimes, which I didn't see before. So I'm more perceptive to the innate inner meaning of the story, which is beyond the words.
And it's not just the story. It was expressed in and manifest in reality. There are, the appearance of tragedies and turmoil, along with triumphs, but there's always triumphs even in that. And here's an example of that.
Yeah, it's what comes through is what Shakespeare said about walking the boards, all something, and fury, and then it's over.
Yes.
And maybe before I didn't want it to be over, but now everything is everything's fine.
Yeah. Through tempest and storm.
Yeah. Do you know the quote?
Not any more than that, and but through tempest and storm, through tempest and storm, I find myself still in
That-
ever-present presence.
Yeah, I've had more of that stillness than I did before, and I'm more forgiving of my irritations and other people's irritations, and I'm more accepting of the fact that I'm not perfect. And accepting that is a big step forward.
Yes. Well, to any of you perfectionists out there, embracing our imperfect perfection is even more fun, and I get to do that every day, sometimes more than I care for, and I'm going to even embrace that.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah. So again, Stephen, thank you for taking and giving time here, as divine time. Divine dude, you're
Yes.
so awesome. Namaste, let your light shine.
Namaste.
And to all of our audience, let your divine light shine. This is Hilton the Land. Divine dude, tune in forevermore to yourself and all those around you. We'll see you in the light.